আউযুবিল্লাহি মিনাশ শাইতানির রাজিম বিসমিল্লাহির রহমানির রহিম আসসালামু আলাইকুম ওয়া রাহমাতুল্লাহি ওয়া বারাকাতুহু I hope to the Almighty Creator, all my students, I hope you all are well at home. So dear students, you know, I am sharing some ideas with you about simple, complex and compound with you. You know, last week I have taken a class on simple, complex and compound, and I gave you some surface idea about simple, complex and compound, and so far I can remember I told you how we can identify a simple, a complex and a compound sentence very easily. And to give you some techniques, perhaps I discussed with you about clauses, and with the knowledge of clause, how we can identify a sentence whether it is simple or complex or compound. Okay, dear students, today I will start my lecture from the last point where I stopped in my last week's class. So dear students, you know, this chapter is a very big one and somewhat difficult for the students, but I am trying to give you some techniques, some cues, so that you can identify the sentences very simply and you can sense them very easily. So dear students, just you must have to look at the board. You know, we are taking the class on behalf of DEO Rangpur Online School, and my class is only for the students of class 10, and the students of class 9, you can also follow this class. So dear students, just look at in my last class where I finished my lecture, that was like this. Just I am giving some symbol so that just you can remember. So I told you that like this is a single clause, this is independent clause, and again if the sentence is like this, if in the sentence there are two clauses, one dependent and one independent, or it may be independent or dependent, and another I told you, if the sentence contains two independent clauses and joined with the coordinating conjunctions, then I told you this sentence is a simple, this two complex, and this is compound. This was my last week's lecture summary. So dear students, today I am going to tell you some techniques how I can create a clause in a sentence, how I can minimize a sentence, a clause from a big sentence. So before that, just I am going to tell you some techniques. So dear students, if any sentence contains a single independent clause, you know, this is called simple sentence. If the sentence contains one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses, then it will be complex sentence. And if the sentence contains two or more independent clauses and joined with some coordinating conjunctions, then it will be compound. So what techniques I have to earn from here? So dear students, so now if you look at here, so in the simple we have only one clauses, but in complex and compound we have two clauses. So just as a student, just try to take the techniques from my lecture. So in complex and compound we have two clauses, but in simple we have only one clauses. So technically, if I can remember it, if I can take it in my memory, that if I would like to make any complex or compound sentences into simple sentence, so what should I do? Because there are two clauses here, but in a simple we have only one clauses. So as a student, what techniques I have to learn? I have to learn this. From this, if I want to sense compound or complex into simple, we must have to minimize a clause. We have to minimize a clause from here. Then here one clause and one clause. Then this sentence will be a simple one. Again, so this is a technique number one. Students, please try to follow me. And I would like to request all the students, those who have joined in the class, please share this class to your own timeline, so that the other students can join here and can be benefited. So dear students, so the technique number 1, if I want to make a complex and compound sentence into simple, my target will be I must have to minimize the clause from these big sentences, because there are 2 clauses, but in simple we need only 1 independent clauses. So here the question is, you may ask me, sir, how I can minimize a clause from a big sentence? So we must have to learn that. But here, just take the point, that if I would like to change complex or compound into simple, I must have to break, I must have to minimize, I must have to avoid 1 clause. How I will minimize, how I will avoid, how I will break a clause, as a student I have to learn. That will be another techniques. From here I will try to remember 1 techniques, that if I want to make a compound or complex sentence into simple, I must have to minimize a clause from here. How I will minimize, that different things. The point is, I must have to minimize a clause from here. So dear student, this is technique number 1. Now I am going to tell you the technique number 2. In simple sentence, you know, a simple sentence contains only 1 independent clauses. But we know in complex sentence or compound sentence, there are at least 2 clauses. But in simple, we have only 1 clauses. Now the question, so what will be the question? What questions will arise here? That if I want to change any simple sentence into complex or compound, so what will happen? I must have to add a clause here. So how much interesting it is. So these techniques, if you can understand, so how much easy it will be, because without techniques, I told you at the very beginning, this chapter is somewhat difficult for the student. But I think if you have yes, a Bidan, you have also, thank you very much. So dear students, so if I have some techniques, then it will not be difficult for me, then it will not be confusing to me. So if I want to change a simple sentence into complex or compound, then I must have to add a clause with this clause, because these 2 sentences contain at least 2 clauses. But a simple sentence contains only 1 single clauses. So with these clauses, if I add another dependent clause, then my sentence will be a complex one. But when I will add the clause, but if I add an independent clause here, then my sentence will be compound one. So how easy it will be. So these techniques, the 2 techniques I have told you. So dear students, you must have to remember the techniques 1 and 2. I told you 2 techniques. Technique number 1, if I want to change a complex or compound sentence into simple, I must have to minimize a clause from here, because among these 2 between these 2 clauses, we must have to minimize 1. So how I will minimize? I am going to tell you after some times. And technique number 2, if I would like to change a simple sentence into complex or compound, that's not a matter, I must have to add a clause with it. If I add a dependent clause, it will be a complex sentence. And if I add an independent clause with it, the sentence will be a compound sentence. So now as a student, you may have a question to me, sir, how I will add a clause and how I will minimize a clause from a big sentence, or how I can add a clause with a very single clauses. So this is, again, I must have to add some techniques. So here my techniques is only 2. If I would like to change complex or compound to simple, I must have to minimize a clause. And again, if I would like to make a simple sentence into complex or compound, then I must have to add a clause. These 2 techniques just you will try to remember. So dear students, now I am going to give you some techniques how you can add a new clause with a previous clause. So the techniques, what will be the techniques? Just you have to look at. In my last class, So far I can remember, I told you the which sentence is a simple, complex and compound, you can find out very easily. So here at first I am going to tell you how I can add a clause with a previous clause. So here just I need three techniques. To minimize a clause or to add a clause with the previous clauses, then I need only three techniques. These are not difficult to remember. So dear students, just I am writing an example, then I will tell you. Just I am writing a very easy example for you. Seeing me, he ran away. So dear students, if you observe that this is subject and this is a predicate. So here we have only one independent clauses here. And this is another phrase here. This is a participle phrase, you know. So as in these sentences we have only one independent clause. So easily, obviously, we can say this is a simple sentence. So according to my techniques, if I would like to change this sentence into complex or compound, so what should I do? I told you we must have to add a clause with it. If I can add a clause with it, if I add a dependent clause with it, it will be complex. If I add an independent clause again with it, then it will be a compound sentence. The question is, sir, how I will add a clause? Because this chapter is called tense formation. We cannot change the meaning. Be careful. I will add a clause here, but I must have to be careful that the meaning should be unchanged. After adding the clause, if the meaning changed, then my answer will not be right. So by following some techniques, we can add a clause with it very successfully. So I told you the techniques number. There are totally three techniques to add a clause with these clauses. So dear students, my technique number one, you must have to, if you can look at here, technique number one, a clause marker. Meaning, if I would like to add a clause with this, I must have to take a clause marker first. This is your duty number one. So, suppose I am a student of class 10. I am changing this sentence into complex one. So number one, I must have to take a clause marker. So just I am taking a clause marker here. So you know when is a clause marker and this marker is fixed for a dependent clause. I told you in my previous classes that the dependent clause has some markers. Without markers, a dependent clause cannot be formed. And perhaps I gave you 23 markers and I told you that you must have to remember this. So like this, who, whom, whose, when, where, why, how, while, who is, what, that, if, since, as, because, though, although, till, until, unless, so that, so, dash, that, as soon as, etc. I told you this type of markers fixed for the dependent clauses. So number one techniques, I must have to take a clause marker. So I have taken a marker here. Number two, we have to take a subject. To make a clause, at first I have to take a clause marker, then I have to take a subject. So dear students, I must have to take the marker from my previous learning, from my memory, because I must have to learn on this. But when I will go to take a subject, this is not a difficult one, because in the clauses, in the given clauses, we have a subject here. Just you will copy the subject. So I have nothing, nothing to be changed where I will get the subject, because in the given clauses we have a subject here. Just I will copy the subject here. So dear students, I told you just you have to take three techniques. So technique number one, I must have to take a clause marker here. I have taken it, and I have to take a subject. Yes, I have taken it. Number three, we have to take a verb. So dear students, how I will take a verb from here? Because you know this is a clause and there is no verb here, you know it. But how I will take a verb? Because we know the definition of clause. A clause is a group of related words having at least a subject and a predicate. I told you in my previous classes. So again, you have nothing to be tensed. How you will take the verb? In the given clause, you will find a verb here. This is ran. So you know this is past indefinite form. So there is a non-finite verb here. You will turn this non-finite verb into finite. How you will turn a non-finite verb into finite? The technique is that just you will follow the form here and you will copy the form of that non-finite verb here, then your verb will automatically be formed. So this is in the past indefinite form, and there is a non-finite verb saying, if I made past indefinite form, it will be saw. So dear students, how easy it is. We have nothing to be tensed. So I have done only 3 works here. I have taken a clause marker here, I have taken a subject, and I have taken a verb here. I told you only doing 3 works we can make a clause. Now dear students, I have taken 3. Now I will see whether my sentence has become a complex sentence or not. After taking these 3 words, now just I will copy the next part of the sentences. Just I am trying to copy, when he saw me, he ran away. Now how easy it is, dear students. Now if you observe, this is a dependent clause and this is independent clause. So this sentence has become a very right complex sentences. So this is not very difficult for if you have these techniques. So now dear students, no, I do not want to make a complex sentence. I want to make a compound sentence here. So what will be? My techniques will be the same. We have to take a marker, then we have to take a subject and verb. So now from here I will take a subject. So I will write down, I will copy the subject first, and then this is verb. And saying, if I turn, it will be saw, then I will me, and I will write a marker of a compound sentence. In my first class I told you the markers of a compound sentence must be used between these 2 clauses. So in the complex we can use the marker before the clauses or after the clauses, no problem. But in the compound sentence we must have to use the marker between the 2 clauses. So I have used the marker here, and this was the subject and this was the verb. I have done only 3 works here again. So now I will copy the next clause here. He saw me and he ran away. How easily I have made the sentence, I have changed the sentence into compound sentences. So dear students, it will not be difficult for you, I think. So here my technique number 1, I have given you 3 techniques. You must have to remember it in your head. So what is the techniques? If I would like to make a simple sentence into complex or compound, I must have to add a clause. How I can add a clause? I have to do 3 things only to add a clause. What are they? I have to take a clause marker first, then I have to take a subject. How I can take a subject? I will copy the subject from the given clauses, and again I have to take a finite verb. So how I will take the finite verb from here? Just I will follow the verb in the given clauses, and I will follow the form, and if I turn the non-finite verb into this form, then this verb will be automatically finite verb. So it will not be difficult for me. Then easily I can make a simple sentence into complex or compound without any hesitation. If I have some markers in my head, and if I have the techniques, then what should I do? So dear students, now I am going to tell you how I will change a complex and a compound sentence into simple. Because in the complex and compound sentence we have two clauses, but in a simple we have only one clauses. So I told you in my first techniques that if I would like to change complex or compound sentence into simple sentence, we must have to minimize a clause. So now the question as a student you may ask me, sir, how I will change and how I will minimize a clause from a complex and compound sentences. Again, you must have to have three techniques only. To add a clause you will need three techniques. Again, to minimize a clause or to avoid a clause, to break a clause from a complex and compound sentence, again you have to have three techniques. So just I am going to tell you. Just I am writing two sentences here. When he did the work, he went home. Dear students, you know this is a complex sentence. You can identify the sentences very easily, I know, because this is a dependent clause and this is independent clause. So this is a complex sentence, no doubt. Again, she ate rice and she went to school. Now again if you follow here, so this is an independent clause and this is another independent clause and we have a coordinating conjunction between them. So this is a compound sentence and this is a complex sentence. In these both sentences we have two clauses. Now any of the sentences, if I want to make a simple sentence from here, so what is my technique? My technique is that we must have to minimize a clause from here. Otherwise I cannot make the sentences simple. It will be a difficult one for you. So now how I can minimize a sentence? I told you I must have to have three techniques. So what are the techniques I am going to show you? Techniques number one. Avoid the marker. So dear students, so here the opposite work, when you will add a clause, you have to do three things I told you few moments ago. Now I will do the opposite work just. At that point we took a marker here, now I will avoid, I will minimize the marker from here. So this is complex, so I must have to minimize the marker from here, I have to avoid it. And here the marker is, so I will avoid here. So I am going to make these both two sentences at the same time as a simple one. So that's number one, I will avoid the marker from here. Now make a verb non-finite. So dear student, you have to make a verb non-finite verb here. So how I will make, because in the sentences there are two finite verbs, you know it, but one verb I must have to make a non-finite verb. So how I will make? Here as a student you have to have some techniques, you have to have some rules, the how I can make a finite verb into non-finite verb. So before that, okay dear students, it will be number 3, but number 2 will be, we have to minimize the subject. How? So I have minimized the marker here and I will minimize the subject also. Again in here I have minimized the marker and I will minimize the subject here. But the number 3, I have to make a verb non-finite verb. So dear students, how I will make So this is the finite verb, did. Just I will making the verb doing. So how easy it is, dear students. If I can once understand the techniques, then this simple, complex and compound will be very easy for you. It will not be difficult for anyone. So doing, just now I will copy the rest one. So doing the, I have minimized it and I have broken this verb. I have made this finite verb into non-finite, and then just I am going to copy. Doing the work, he went home. So now if you just look at the sentence has already become a very right simple sentences without changing any meaning from here. And again this was the compound, so I have minimized the subject and verb also. Now just I will make this verb into non-finite verb. Yeah, this is eating. So eating, now I will copy. Eating rice, she went to school. So dear students, how easily I can make this complex or compound sentences into simple sentence. So by following these only three techniques. So by following these three techniques, we can make a complex and compound sentence into simple very easily. Again following these three techniques, we can make a complex and compound sentence simple. And again following these three techniques, we can change a complex and compound sentence into simple very easily. So dear students, this chapter is a very big one. I am very sorry, I am extremely sorry that it is not possible to finish the lecture for me today, because we have a limited time. So dear students, if you have understood the 2 days techniques, in my next class I will request the authority to give me another classes on simple, complex and compound, because in my next class I will try to show you how I can take the marker easily, because we have to know some techniques again to take the marker in the sentences, and again we have to know some rules on grammar, that how I can make a finite verb into non-finite. Here just I have used present participle, but this will not be enough, because to make a finite verb into non-finite verb we have at least 15 rules how we can make a finite verb into non-finite verb. But my 2 days target was to give you the techniques, what I should do if I would like to change the sentences from one into another. So dear students, if I would like to summarize my 2 days lecture, just I have given you 2 techniques. Number 1 technique was that if I would like to change a simple sentence into complex or compound, we must have to add a clause with it. Again, technique number 2, it was, if I would like to change a complex or compound sentences into simple, we must have to minimize a clause. This was my first target. And the second target was how I can add a clause and how I can minimize a clause. To add a clause, we have to do 3 things, only 3 techniques. We must have to take a clause marker first, then we have to take a subject, and we have to take a verb. That means we have to change the non-finite verb into finite verb, then a clause will automatically be added with the previous clauses, then it will be simple, complex or compound. Again, last number technique was, if I would like to make a complex or compound sentence into simple, then what should we do? Again I have to do 3 works only. What? At first I have to minimize, I have to avoid, I have to break the clause marker. Number 2, I have to minimize the subject. Number 3, I have to make the finite verb into non-finite verb by following some grammatical rules. But I couldn't tell you, I have no time to tell you the rules today, but just I have finished my techniques. So as a student, just state the two techniques. I have to add a clause with a simple to make simple complex or compound. I have to minimize a clause to make a complex or compound sentence into simple. And how I can add a clause? By following three techniques I can make a clause. By three techniques again I can minimize a clause from a big sentences. My today's target was that, dear students, if you have understood my techniques today, I hope, I strongly believe that it will not be difficult for many days for you. So I will request to the authority and I will take another classes on the simple, complex and compound, and then I will show you how I can make a finite verb into non-finite easily. Then again we will have some techniques, we need some techniques here. And in the compound or complex, what markers, whether every times I cannot take when, or every times I cannot take and, because I have to take different parts of different types of markers, but again I have to be careful so that the meaning kept unchanged. So we must have some techniques. Which techniques if I follow, then I can take the markers very successfully and I can make a finite verb into non-finite very easily, keeping the meaning unchanged. So in my coming lecture, I will try my best to give you some ideas on that. And today's, dear students, I would like to say you goodbye because our time has been finished. So I hope you are studying at home and you are taking preparation for the coming SSC examination, because you are the students of class 10. You must have to take preparation during this pandemic situation. So we are with you, we are trying to give you some help. We are trying to help you so that your studies become boost up. So dear students, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May Allah bless you. Jazak Allah khair. Thank you.